It is Locked On Jazz for the 17th of September, a live edition of the show. We'll take your thoughts and your questions. We'll look a little bit at the Lakers and the Nuggets, and we'll talk about backup centers for the Utah Jazz. It's all coming up on today's edition of Locked On Jazz. Pow! How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. I'm really excited for the live chat today. We are live coming to you on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitch, on Instagram, and on Periscope. So please get your questions in about the Jazz. Any thoughts on the Nuggets, if you want to share that as well, please do. And their craziness, how you're feeling with the Nuggets advancing after we had them up down 3-1 and felt like we were on the verge of advancing. So we'll talk about all those things. Excited to have you aboard. Open up the chat room for you. I also will open up the show. I want to talk about our preview today is our season review is Tony Bradley. I actually think it's a much bigger, kind of more interesting conversation than just Tony. It's backup center. And the Jazz are in an interesting situation with the backup center position for multiple reasons. And I want to dig into that. But before, I want to congratulate Rudy, third team All-NBA. Incredible honor to be All-NBA. It also gets, it makes him super max eligible again. And that's an interesting discussion. I'm sure the questions will come in on it. I'll just quickly point this out. Like, I keep hearing people say Rudy doesn't deserve the supermax. That's actually not true. Rudy has earned the supermax. Like, that's the way the rules work. We can't afford to pay Rudy the supermax and still build a roster that wins around him. That might be true too. But I've heard the phrase, and maybe it's semantics, but I've heard the phrase, Rudy doesn't deserve the supermax. I can't go there. There's a set of rules that are established, and he has earned the right to that. Therefore, he's earned that. Literally earned that. No other way to say it. Would I pay him that? That's a very difficult question. I probably wouldn't pay much other than Giannis, LeBron, Luka, Jokic, maybe, the supermax, right? Like, that's just not a contract, and nor have most people in the NBA paid that to anyone, right? The one thing that's happened every time that someone's had a chance for that supermax is that they've actually not gotten it, right? They've not given it to that player. So we'll dig into that. Backup center is interesting. As we sit right now, Ed Davis's contract is on the books, and Tony Bradley's contract's on the books. Okay, that's a lot. The fact is, what the analytics will tell you is you should be paying about $1 million for your backup center. Like Alex Len at the minimum, Dwayne Dedmon at the minimum. Like, that's kind of where the analytics will tell you that backup centers, we're at about $8-9 million now for our centers. Plus, we're playing Rudy 30. So the first part of this discussion is, what can you actually afford to pay your backup center? The second part of the discussion, which I think is even more fascinating, is what do we want out of our backup center? Do we want a poor man's Rudy Gobert? So that's Alex Len, right? That would be an Alex Len type. He could back up. He can play the center position the same way Rudy does. He actually stretches the floor, shoots a mediocre three-point shot. Like someone like that. Is that what you would like out of your backup center? Would you rather have a completely different backup center? Like, we go small and we play a 1 through 5 switch, and we don't play the same style of defense at all, and we don't do any of the same things along the way that we do. Like, we don't play the same style. The other and the other aspect of it is, if this is the one I hear a lot. Well, if Rudy gets hurt and if Rudy gets hurt, we're dead. Right? If you lose a $30 million a year player to injury, your season's screwed. I don't think you can really build your roster to protect yourself if your $30 million a year player goes down. That's a reality. So to me, there's like 4 tiers here on the backup center position for the Utah Jazz. It's one of the more interesting discussions. One, what should we have for salary allocation? We're high right now. I think Dennis and Justin, but maybe not. Maybe Dennis and Justin would say that we're a defensive-minded team. Rudy's our core, and we better make sure that we have that well covered if needed. That would be very legit. I think the analytics community would kind of say we're high. Then what style of play do you want? And then how far are you willing to go with the risk of, like, part of me wonders, I'm sure someone who knows basketball better than I do is going to laugh at this. Part of me wonders, like, can Jarrell Brantley play backup center and handle the ball? Now, frankly, our team, the last thing we need right now is another ball handler. Like, the uniqueness of what makes us great is our multiple ball handlers. But I think it also, at times, it might be causing us an issue. Give me 1 second. On the video version of the podcast, we were getting a dark camera. We're still getting it. So, all right, nothing I can do about it. So those are the things that are interesting to me. Now, specifically to Tony Bradley. Tony grew a great deal this year. It's kind of a cool story, actually. And I think he deserves a lot of accolades. The consistency's not all the way there yet. So we're going to compare him to the bigs, obviously. So we're now comparing Tony to 81 bigs in the NBA. The top talent or the badges they give him is a box out badge, a putback boss. They call him a putback boss, and they give him a bronze for rim protector, which I actually don't feel like is really accurate. That's from B-Ball Index. Again, we're using B-Ball Index. Top area, offensive rebound, post play, finishing, and roll gravity. Offensive rebounds for 75 possessions. He's elite. Post up, foul draw, he's pretty good. Total roll man, and getting to the rim rating. So let's roll through a little bit quickly on his numbers. Minutes, opportunity, usage, all on the low end. Lineup data, he's got an A offensive talent when he's on the floor. He's got a C+ defensive talent when he's on the floor. We get the same F for playmaking, A for spacing. That's been a signature of our team. Defensive versatility, not much. Matchup difficulty, we gave him the easiest matchups we could. Isolation game, non-existent. Three-point shooting, non-existent. Let's get to finishing. Total shots at the rim, he gets an A because it's a huge majority of his shots. Getting to the rim, he gets an A-. He does not pass out. He has he has very little assist rate on passing out. His passing aggressiveness, his passing versatility, some of the lowest in the league. His assists per 75 possessions is crazy low, 4th percentile. So there's not a lot of pass out aspect to Tony's game yet, nor is there probably defense forcing him to do it. He's not a cutter or flasher. He's pretty basic pick and roll guy that Joe Ingles finds some of the time. He's graded as a total roll man impact. He gets an A. Roll impact, he gets an A. Rim gravity, he gets an A-. Rolls 90% of the time, never pops. Slips 10% of the time. Post play, he was okay. Limited time. Offensive rebounding, he's as good an offensive rebounder as there is in the NBA. He actually gets the crown for the highest offensive rebounding rate for 75 possessions of anyone in the NBA. He gets an A for putbacks. He's in the 96th percentile. An offensive rebounding chance, he gets an A. This is what he was in college. He was the best offensive rebounder in college. It is translated over. It's exactly who he was. And defensive rebounding gets an A-. Solid. Right? We know who he is. He's not. These other skills are not his deal. Perimeter defense, he doesn't grade particularly well. His defensive matchups, the Jazz did a nice job of kind of hiding him. He guarded the center 53% of the time. The only one that's a little disappointing is their interior defensive rankings on him are kind of all over the place. So his rim deterrence rating, which is a rate-adjusted measure of how a player's presence on the court impacts opponents' frequency of attacking the rim. He got an F. Now, is that in contrast to Rudy? And that the minute Rudy goes out, everyone just attacks the rim? Whereas percentage of shots contested at the rim, he gets an A. Rim contest for 75%, he gets an A. His block rate on contests, he gets a D. So he's not a guy that gets a lot of blocks. His rim defensive field goal percentage against expected is about average C-. So he doesn't see, he's not at a stage yet where he has massive defensive impact on things. His defensive matchups is against the lowest usage rate on the floor 61% of the time. Jazz did a nice job with that. Overall, his impact ratings on offense, he gets a C+ on Jacob Goldstein's player impact rating. His defense, he gets an F. Some of this is going to be, I think, because he gets badly judged here because he takes off from Rudy, I think. Real plus-minus, he gets a B- offensively and F defensively. Raptor, he gets an A offensively and a B- defensively. That's good. And box plus-minus, Tony gets a B- offense and a C defense. Overall, his effective field goal percentage, he gets an A. True shooting percentage, an A. Points per shot, an A-. Because when he gets his shots, he gets good. All right, let's get a little breakdown on Tony. Good discussion about the backup center. We'll come back and we will talk about the matchup of the of your questions. Actually, we won't talk about any matchup. I want to talk about your questions first. First and foremost, I want to take your questions on everything. Today's show is brought to you by Intercap. Intercap continues to do just great job. Recently, we've connected multiple locked on people with Steve Carter. I can't be more thankful of that. I want to thank Intercap. They did their 2020 backpack drive again, despite the pandemic. Over 1,800 fully stocked backpacks for Title I schools. They also raised about $60,000 in other donations to support causes to promote education for those who need it most. I mean, this is just Intercap stepped up during COVID to help out people. They stepped up the backpack drive for the second straight year. So not only are they just amazing in getting everything done and why they're growing, but a fabulous member of the community. So tip of the hat to Intercap and Brock and the crew over there. Steve Carter is our loan officer for Locked On Jazz, and you'll find out the difference. He's amazing. You can call him at 385-800-8528, 385-800-8528. Intercap Lending, NMLS number 190465. For more information, visit intercaplending.com. What's really the responsiveness, the understanding, they get things done. I can't compliment them enough. So please, if you're looking to redo your mortgage, need a little refinance right now, or you're in shopping for a new house and you need a loan officer, please give Steve Carter a call over at Intercap Lending. Again, that number is 385-800-8528. 385-800-8528. Today's show is also brought to you. Well, by the way, I did, if you're wondering, I did send Bill. If you listen to Locked On NBA today, I did send Bill Bars to Ben Golliver. I just want to point that out. But today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Rock Auto. Do-it-yourselfer, professional, prices are all the same. Stock, unbelievable. Old school, easy, unique, remarkably easy to navigate website for you that gives you everything that you need at rockauto.com. And reliably low prices, all the parts on your car you'll ever need. It's what makes Rock Auto so great. Why go take the time to go into a brick and mortar store? Why take the time to find out only things you can get from their prices and what they have in selection when you can get the most massive collection? One of our hosts has actually been having fun with Rock Auto. He takes like a random car, Pinto 1975. I don't know if that actually exists. And looks up BMW 2002 1973 and looks up what he can find on the various different parts. And he says, like, it doesn't matter what car you search. You always have been able to find some car that has, or some parts. Rock Auto is just amazing. So check it out. RockAuto.com. Reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com. And when you're checking out, please make sure you write Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us section. All right, let's get to your questions, your thoughts here on, we are live on Twitch, we are live on YouTube, we are live on Facebook, we are live on Periscope, and we are live on Instagram. Appreciate you stopping by on Instagram and saying hi as well. All right, let's get to the questions. David, who do you think would be realistic-wise for the addition for the Jazz? So from a free agency standpoint, the first question is Jordan Clarkson. And then if you add Jordan Clarkson, then I think you're kind of done with your free agency moves. You still have the mid-level exception, but you're going to be pushing up against the tax. And I think the tax is going to be pushing down with the COVID impact. And so then the next question is trades. Can you stretch Ed Davis's contract? Can you move some other players to pick up someone? Are you willing to take 2 or 3 years on someone's deal that fits for you, or someone else you can move a year? So, Rob, I don't have a specific answer. Like, I don't have a guy you're shooting for. I mean, last year I think it was pretty obvious we were going to move past Derek and move into stretch 4. And so you were talking Nikola Mirotic, you were talking Bojan Bogdanovic. And it was pretty clear that we were looking at a backup center at that point because of no Derek. And you were looking at, a Jermichael Green. There was some backup point guard discussion I think we needed. And they all, TJ McConnell and Ryan Arcidiacono and all those guys got signed to kind of crazy deals, and you were left with a minimum deal for Emmanuel Mudiay. So, as time plays out, I think it will become more and more clear. But right now, I don't actually have that kind of narrowed in. And I think there's a lot of incredibly great job by the Jazz to have the kind of flexibility that they have here. Is Bojan Bogdanovic slide to a 3? And if he does, then are you looking at a different player at that point? You're trying to go find an athletic 4 that's available on the market. Are you trying to, is Donovan going to be your primary ball handler? I don't think Mike picks up his option. I don't think we're trying to move Mike, but you got a $30 million piece. If Donovan's becoming our primary ball handler, is there a better $30 million piece? Is there some other $30 million piece that wants another shot, that needs another spot? So, I think it gets, and you're really risk taking at that point at a pretty high level. So I don't actually have that answer. Robert Fletcher, yay, I finally made a live show. Well, we are glad to have you on the show. Did Mike Conley meet your expectations? Christian Stewart, great question on Facebook. I think the answer on one level is no. And then on the other level, I think you have to back up and ask whether your expectations were realistic, right? So, he was a 20-point-a-game scorer and this and that. So here's where I'd say no to the answer. One is that he was a 20-point-a-game scorer in Memphis, and I really thought he was because I think I watched him with Gasol all those years, I really felt like he was a true point guard that was going to distribute and get opportunities for other guys. And you know what? He's a scorer. He's actually not that different of a point guard than Donovan, frankly. He's a scorer. And so I think my expectations on him were wrong. So when you ask the question, does Mike Conley meet your expectations? I actually think I was at fault here. So I expected a player that's different than what he was. I expected this distributor who was going to create opportunities, get Donovan some open catch and shoots, and do some other thing, and find Rudy at the rim in a way that he never had before. I mean, even held conversations with Mike during training camp, like, oh my gosh, you've never had a lob threat before, and oh my gosh, you've never played with shooters before. Well, you know what? That didn't actually plan out the way I expected. I thought he'd be 9 assists a game and diming it everywhere. That's not who he is. And so that was my fault. And then part 2 of this is, if that's not who he is, then was it fair for me to expect 20 points a game out of him? And that's not true either. Because he was the number 1 usage rate on the team in Memphis and had the ball in his hands all the time. He came here, we played a different style, and he went and gets the ball. He's probably the 3rd most common ball handler with Donovan and Bojan, or at least 3rd most common shot taker, possession user, which is a vastly different change. So then you get into, after February 1st, he averaged about 17 points a game. He averaged, I think, 19 in the bubble. Wait a sec. Now, maybe that is a really fair expectation. Understanding that I blew it, that he's not actually a diamond out point guard, and that he is a high usage scorer, and that's why he averaged 21 points a game. then maybe the 17 points a game after February 1st is actually a better answer to who we should have expected. So now as I look forward with Mike, you know what I'd like? I'd like someone who takes the pressure ball handling off Donovan some of the time. I'd like one of the best catch and shoot guys in the NBA, which we saw in the playoffs. I would like someone who can just score it, which we saw in the playoffs. And I'd like someone who can use the Jazz off-ball offense to dribble, drive, and create opportunities a little bit more for other people, but also for himself. The other one is that I think I've learned is that 6'1" point guards have a hard time getting the ball out to three-point shooters in this league right now. Ben Golliver and I talked about this on Locked On NBA today. You look at the best passers in the league, they're all 6'6" or bigger right now. And that's a big deal. So I don't know if that answers your questions. But I would say that maybe he didn't meet my expectations, but I'm beginning to wonder whether our expectations were right on him. Hey, Locke, what are your thoughts on All-NBA team? Could Donovan have been selected over Tatum? I don't think so. Jason Tatum's great. Jason Tatum, midway, the biggest storyline in the NBA that probably wasn't talked about enough, that was when Jason Tatum became a superstar midway through the year, scoring 30 points a game and just carrying Boston. I mean, Boston finished as the 3 seed in the East? So I didn't think for a second, actually, that I thought Donovan should have made it over Jason Tatum. I didn't think that was and I thought Rudy's third team was fine. Hello from Singapore, says Faz. Hello. I'm trying to get a question up. Tony Jones says paying Rudy the Supermax is a bad idea. What do you think? Robert, this is such a complicated question, and to answer it in a bubble of just that simple question, which I'm sure Tony has more depth to it. I love Tony. Don't tell him I said that. I think is misleading. You know what's a bigger problem is losing Rudy. Okay, so you want to give me my worst case scenario. My worst case scenario is the Jazz without Rudy. Maybe my second worst case scenario is the Jazz with Rudy on the Supermax. But I'll take that over the other worst case scenario. So the idea thinks paying Rudy as the Supermax is a bad idea. Yeah, losing Rudy's a worse idea. Right? Oh, well, we didn't want to pay Rudy the Super. That's, I think, a really, really important part of this discussion. What's worse? Jazz without Rudy or Jazz with Rudy on the Supermax? And Rudy probably might know that. That gets into the negotiations. There is a scenario here where the Jazz just don't have a choice and they have to pay Rudy an exorbitant amount of money. He's earned it, the right to it. Is it the best use of our cap space and our finance? Probably not. But you know what's worse is losing Rudy. It's very complicated. And it really goes back to the chocolate chip cookie analogy. I know Oreo cookies dominated us for a long time, but we're going to talk chocolate chip cookies here in a second. Today's show brought to you by my friends over at SOS Support. When you're building a company and you're trying to make the inroads that you need to build a company, you don't want to get tied up having to do all the stuff that isn't the creative stuff. So that's often why you have, we have at Locked On, we have someone who does our finances. We have a company that we've outsourced our HR to. This is the same thing you do with IT. And SOS Support can help businesses. We have hybrid plans starting at just $10 a computer, fully outsourced plans to customize your business, and also can provide supplemental IT support for existing IT departments. So you're a small company, you're growing, you have your IT department, but actually you need more SOS Support. You have a growing company, you actually don't have an IT department, and you're bring commerce in. Now we're talking. Now you better get on it because the financial institutions are on you. The banks have started to process to make sure you're secure. Financial institutions are acquiring companies to have all their security in their data, and that's where these guys come in and help you out. These guys, by the way, are Scott and Jason, and they have been in business at SOS Support now for 17 years. So they'll get you prepared. They'll make sure you're in great situation. This is not a game you want to play from behind. They'll help you out. Doctors' offices, live manufacturing, molding houses, steel fabrication, high-tech manufacturing, dental offices, law offices, accounting firms, really any business that's 5 to 100 people. And they will help you out with cybersecurity, day-to-day, value-centric work, and they've been in business since 2004 with an incredible referral rate. Tell them that you got it from Locked On, and they'll get a no-obligation IT assessment, including a PCI assessment. 801-563-9700. 801-563-9700. Did you hear it? 801-563-9700. All right, let's go to Instagram. Always love Denzel Valentine and Doug McDermott. I like one of the two. I'm not a Denzel Valentine guy. I do love Doug McDermott. I do worry as I watch the playoffs whether you can afford to have a bad defensive player on the floor. If Doug McDermott is on the floor and people are hunting him out defensively, can you afford to have that on the floor? Now, I got to go dig into Doug McDermott's data and make sure that he's actually a bad defender. I don't know that to be true, but it feels as though that's probably the case. Any substance to the Conley goes to the Knicks rumor. I've not heard the rumor. Little substance. So Julius Randle, could we get, or do we want Julius Randle? I don't know how we would use Julius Randle. He needs a lot of possessions, wants the ball in his hands a lot. He does score it. We're suddenly be interesting. We'd play him at the 4, Boyan at the 3, Joe at the 2, Donovan at the 1, and we suddenly got really big again. He's not a great shooter. You'd have 2 non-shooters on the floor, really, with Rudy and Randle, so he's more offensively versatile than Favors. But the one thing on Randle that I've thought's interesting is he has not played on a lot of winning teams. I had a scout once say to me, I love everything Julius Randle does, but I wish every time, but then I look on the floor and somebody else on the floor should be doing it for him. It's interesting. I mean, he is a 20-point-a-game scorer. He is a bucket getter. His effective field goal percentage last year was awful, 49%. So well below league average. I would really have to dig in on Julius Randle. My instinct on Julius Randle is I wouldn't be comfortable with him. Oh, the Derek Favors question of the day. Love it. Steve Campbell. So I love Faves, love to have him back. We've talked, so first thing is, we've seemed to have just utterly forgotten we could not score with Derek Favors and Rudy Gobert on the floor together. So if you're bringing Faves back, you're really bringing Faves back as a backup center. Is Faves really at the point of his career where he just wants to play 16, 18 minutes a night behind Rudy Gobert? Like, I worry about that. That's such a drop. Like, to me, that worries me of whether he's really engaged or not. I know he loves Utah. I know he wants to be back, but I'm just I'm uncomfortable with that. 2 is I don't want to pay my mid-level exception for a backup center when I'm paying Rudy 30. It's a bad allocation of money. So ignoring all of the aspects of I love Faves and Faves is great and we want to have Faves around, to me, it just doesn't line up the way everybody wants to make it sound, other than Derek probably wants to be here. From Corey, does COVID NBA financial situation make expansion more likely? Wow, that is a really interesting question. So, one would be, they need an influx of money. 2 would be no, because who wants to pay an expansion fee when they don't know when they can have fans in the stands? 3 is I think we're going to see partial ownership of franchises sold. So I think we saw it with the Spurs. I think we're going to see a bunch of teams sell 20, 25, 30% of their franchise to get an influx of money. That's what I think I'm going to see more than the idea that we're going to see expansion. Eric Wood, what are the realistic targets for the Jazz coming off season? It seems our team will be the most effective moving Boyan to 3 and adding an athletic 4. So if you want to do that, you probably have to move off Jordan Clarkson. Are you willing to, and then if I have it right, if you move off Jordan Clarkson, you have the mid-level exception and not much more you can offer. And can you get that player you're talking about, Eric, in free agency through that mechanism. Now, the other is trading, right? Moving pieces, trading, doing that kind of stuff. But from a pure free agency market, if I have it understood correctly, your first decision is Clarkson. If you make the Clarkson decision, you don't have a lot more free agents, and it's a positive. You don't have a lot more choices. If you decide to pass on Clarkson and you go into the mid-level, now you're going mid-level exception to Phillips. That's all you have because you're over the cap. And so can you pull a mid-level exception player? Let's also, these NBA teams are not rolling in money right now, right? They don't know when they're having fans back. I think that's important. From Max, big fan, appreciate what you do. More power to all Locked On podcasts. Oh, Thursday. Thank you very much, Max. Thursday, by the way, crossover Thursday on the NFL, my favorite day. And we did set another record yesterday. So 6 of the last 7 days, we've had our largest audience ever. I thank you guys a ton. All right, Mitch has a long question. You'll only get part of it on the screen. Let's assume the management are ready to hand Donovan the keys, move on from Conley. What do you think about trading him straight up for Tobias Harris? Salaries work. Sixers might be ready to make some big changes after an early exit. They also can get off a huge contract, and the Jazz set the Jazz line for the next few years. So going into free agency last year, I loved Tobias Harris. And then he got maxed out, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then he didn't have a very good year in Philadelphia. So isolating Tobias Harris just as a player, there's so many things I love about him. There's so many things I think he'd be amazing about on our team. There's so many aspects to who he is and what I think he could do for us that I love. There are so many things I saw in Philadelphia this year that I didn't love. And I can't tell if it's that environment or Tobias Harris. So, I thought he was passive. I thought his defense was poor. I thought he didn't seem engaged. He didn't play with the juice that you wanted him to play. There were not great reports on him, when he was a young player in Orlando about those kind of things, and they all went away, and it seemed like they all came back. But I love his game. He's actually a pretty good pick-and-roll ball handler. He's actually a pretty good rebounder. He's actually a pretty good passer. There's a lot of aspects of his game I really like. From a big picture standpoint, what you bring up, Mitch, is exactly what you're talking about if you're going to trade someone like Conley. You're going to be willing to trade Mike Conley's 30 for somebody else's 30, and maybe you're willing, like the player, and you're willing to take in a few years, and they'll do it because they get off it. It's exactly the right scenario. You're willing to trade Mike Conley's 30 for somebody else's 30 because it doesn't fit there, and you decide Mike doesn't fit here, and so you swap them. That's a Victor Oladipo scenario. Both of them are free agents. We decide we want a bigger guard. They decide they want a true point guard. I don't know why. They have Aaron Holiday. They have a bunch of guys, but that wasn't me proposing something. I'm just trying to find, if you're going to trade Mike Conley, you're either doing it to somebody else who's on that kind of $30 million contract, who they have a reason they want to get off it. 2, they have a situation with a similar contract, and it's just, let's trade bad fit for bad fit. I'm not convinced I think Mike Conley's a bad fit. I'm just, right? I guess the third scenario is you aggregate salaries for someone, and maybe you're taking multiple players on 2 or 3 year deals, and you're giving them some freedom in a big free agent market coming up. Those would be the scenarios by which you can make a Mike Conley deal. Steve wants to know about Bam Adebayo. There's no chance Miami's ever letting him go. No chance. And we have a center that's pretty good last time I checked. Alex, stupid question. With the coach firings happening, is Quinn in any danger of losing his job? No, because Quinn's great at what he does. No, because Quinn has just signed an extension. And no, because that's not how the Millers work. No, one of our greatest assets is Quinn Snyder. So I don't think that's a scenario to talk about. And the big question every Jazz fan is asking, if Denver makes it to the finals, should we see ourselves as a title contender with Bogey? If Denver makes the finals, it's an encouraging moment. The difference between us and them is just not that big. Jokic is great, though. Jokic might be better than any of us realize. Brandon Whiteside, bring back Alec Burks if we can't keep Clarkson. Clarkson seems like he has some same flaws as Burks. The concept is, to some extent here, if you're not bringing back a Jordan Clarkson, where can you find a scorer off the bench that doesn't cost, that you can get at a low dollar? Like all of these things, like, hey, if we're trying to go if we decide you're not, what can you find to replace him? What's your price point? You're thinking about it correctly. All you guys are thinking about it. Hey, Locked On Jazz fan base is super smart. Great show. Thank you. Super conversation. Talk to you guys soon. This is Locked On Jazz. I'd go find your favorite NFL team and listen to Crossover Thursday right now. Brand new Locked On NFL show has been very highly regarded to start off. Or if you want more of me, I did Locked On NBA with Ben Golliver today, so go listen to that. Thanks very much for tuning in. Appreciate all your support to the Locked On Podcast Network. It's been really fun to be on this record-breaking streak, and we thank you for making it happen. This is Locked On Jazz. Have a great day. Bye, Instagram. Bye, friends.